it's been really fulfilling for me. So I hope all of you will take the opportunity if you have the time to do that. Thank you, Karen.
Now I'm wearing the co-chair education hat, and I'm happy to introduce our two speakers today. And certainly this topic, while we were talking about this a year ago, well, it's very much come to the forefront of many of our organizations as we are recruiting and most importantly, trying to retain our talent that we have. So joining us today to present is Craig Evans and Torrence Sparkman. And I'll just give you a little bio about them before I have them join me up here. So Craig Evans is originally from Syracuse, and he started his career as a public school teacher, music teacher, and a freelance musician in Orlando. He holds a bachelor's from Ithaca College in music education, a master's degree in performance violin from Florida State University, and a master's of music education from Florida State, as well as a doctorate in educational leadership with a specialization in education law from the University of Central Florida. Since 2004, he has served as a philanthropic leader in higher education, holding positions at Ithaca College, Syracuse University, as well as Wells College. He's currently the Associate Dean for Development and External Affairs at Johns Hopkins School of Education. And he also served as the Executive Director of the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools in Florida. Prior to that, he was before joining Johns Hopkins, he was the Vice President for Development here at Rochester Regional Health Foundations. And he has over 30 years of experience leading and developing teams and new leaders. And recently in 2021, he completed an International Coaching Federation. It's approved leadership coaching training series. He has been actively coaching new and seasoned leaders for the past 18 months to help them grow their performance and build their teams. Joining him today is Dr. Torrence Sparkman. He's the Associate Professor at RIT Saunders College of Business in the Business Management Department. He received his bachelor's at the University of Illinois and at Chicago, a master's in divinity at the Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and received his Ph.D. at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He's taught at RIT for 8 years and previously was at the University of Houston. Earlier in his career, he was an executive recruiter, and his academic research areas focus on hospitality and nursing and recruitment and HR. So I'm pleased to have them both join us today and give their presentation.
Thank you, Karen. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate the invite. I'm very hopeful that you'll get something out of our presentation today. For both Craig and myself, it's very important that we talk about those issues and those things that cause retention and that help you to accomplish what you need to accomplish in your workplace. As Karen mentioned, my name is Torrence Sparkman. I'm a professor of human resource development, and I teach in the management department at RIT. So what I normally say to people is that I teach both the human resource management as well as the human resource development part of human resources. So that includes the training and development. That also includes the administrative part of human resources as well. So in terms of my background, I have been an executive recruiter, and I have been in positions where I've been able to recruit for development people. So I'm very excited to be in this position today. And as Karen mentioned, part of my research is on diversity and inclusion. And also the other part of my research has to do with retention and onboarding for hospitality and in the nursing field. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about where we're going. So I want to discuss some common issues as it relates to retention and recruitment. And I also want to describe some of the best practices. So, but before I do that, I do want to hear what are some of those issues that you have had that, there we go. I want to hear some of the issues that you've had related to recruitment and retention. What are some of your issues? And I think you'll find is some commonalities here.
There's a lot of offers from other places that are bigger.
Ah, okay, competition with the compensation package. Okay,
Small candidate pools.
okay.
It's become easier to apply for a job, and so there's an inundation of inappropriate candidates for a job.
Okay,
At Heritage, we have people start and leave within sometimes a week or less, or a few months. It's pretty short window.
okay.
It's mostly with direct support.
Okay.
We have salary online, salary.
Salary, okay. Mhm.
They're too long of a cycle from recruitment to hiring.
Ah, okay,
Everybody has that.
yes. Yes. All right, these are really common issues. And as you hear my presentation today, what I try to do is talk about the best practices, but again, my focus has been on the hospitality and on the nursing industry. For hospitality, one of the big things is that people, approach it as a gig. They come in and they work for a short period of time, then they go on to the next position. For the medical field, for nursing, the nurses are retiring. And so you're seeing a lot of nurses that are aging out and wanting to do something else. But that knowledge that they have, most of the industries the medical industries want to keep them. And so, those are some of the challenges that they are facing, and it's very, very similar to what you guys are describing. And so in terms of some of the reasons why people leave, misguided recruiting process. You might have a recruiter that has not given full information regarding the position. They might not be experienced enough to really know what the job entails. And so when they give and talk about the position, they're kind of giving a misleading impression to the perspective about what the job entails. There's also poor work placement. You put a person in the wrong job, right? Or they're not happy with the salary and the benefits, they're too low, or they can compare to someplace else in another industry and they decide to move on. There's a poor management, and that's one of the things that I think Craig is going to talk about, poor management. And this is one of the chief things that causes people to leave. Being in a group, and it's not necessarily, those who are in the supervisory position, but it's in that particular team that causes people to leave. And so how do we address the issues that are within the team? And that's what Craig is going to talk about today. And then there's people just get burned out. After being in a position for a while and there's no advancement, there's nothing that helps them to be self-actualized. There's no development, there's no training. They decided they want to do something different, right? And then the last one that you see there, the retirement, that's something that's happening in teaching or in the education industry, and it's something that's happening in the medical field. So, what does the research say? When you have a program, a formal program of retention, for recruitment and retention, when you have a formal program, something that's written down, that you have policies that's attached to your strategy for human resources, those strategies are the more formal approach is more successful, right? Now, a lot of times you have companies, smaller companies, where they're not able to develop formal strategic human resource plans, right? But the more that you can write down, the more that you can establish policies and routines as it relates to HR practices, the more successful you'll be. So research shows that the successful retention programs are able to result in increased job satisfaction, there's increased performance, there is organizational commitment, and there's a reduction in turnover, right? So also research shows that it helps when the program is formal. It helps when there are policies and that there are practices that are routine that you go through. It also helps when the retention and recruitment program helps individuals become self-actualized. It helps when there's a clear idea of what the role is supposed to be. And it helps when there is a social integration of that individual that starts before they actually come to the location, right? And then the awareness of culture. Again, going back to what Craig is going to talk about. And research also shows that there needs to be a connection between your strategic practices in terms of HR and what you're trying to do in terms of recruitment, right? So if you're trying to develop people or trying to replace people at the top, that should be a part of your strategy, that you are looking for folks who have the backgrounds, who have the potential to fill those types of positions. And that needs to be something that is strategic, not something that's kind of haphazard, right? So at any time, you guys can stop me with any questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep flowing.
I have a question about the social integration. piece.
Sure.
You're saying studies show it's better for a new hire to have those interactions, right? But with the staff before they're on the job. How would you suggest that in certain cases where maybe time is hard to schedule something, and should it be more informal, or are you talking about like job shadowing?
I'm talking about job shadowing, and I'm talking about a realistic job preview. Research shows that when you have a realistic job preview, that is where you have a recruiter who's able to describe the positions, all these slides will be given to you. When you have a recruiter who is able to describe the position and know what the position is as they're talking about it, and actually bring the potential candidate to the workplace and have them see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to know what it's like to be a part of that culture. Then they're not surprised, right? So what I try to do when I talk about onboarding, when I talk about orientations, a lot of times people use those terms interchangeably, right? So what I do here is I kind of break those terms down, right? The first thing that I'm talking about is onboarding. And onboarding is more around the socialization, more around knowing what the performance requirements are, right? And so when we're going through these particular best practices, I want you to be thinking about those two things. What are the performance levels, and what is the nature of the socialization that takes place during the onboarding process, right? So again, the realistic job previews, that's first and foremost. That begins before you actually hire the employee, right? You want to have a job description that's clear, and you want to have a recruiter who understands what they're looking at. And that's one of the biggest keys, right? In terms of a formal orientation, again, this is where we're actually writing down the policies and procedures related to what a person's tasks are supposed to be, what are their responsibilities, and I'll talk about this in just a minute. The new employee or the potential employee, you should also give them some idea of how their career can advance and who they would need to talk to in order for their career to advance. And that's why you see the progress meeting with the stakeholders, right? You want the individual to understand these are the folks who are going to help you advance in your career. And you want to set up those meetings so that they have an idea of what it takes for them to get to that next level. Another best practices, and this might depend on, let me just ask you, how many of you all have LMS or learning management system or some way to track professional development? Okay, all right. That is very important to have that, because what it suggests to the new employee and to the potential employee is that you actually have a process for their career to advance, right? So if you have some way of tracking the professional developments that they have, that they've gone through, you have some way of tracking the way the compliance documents that they need to fill out. Then it's all in one place, and they also have an idea that this is a professional place, right? And also the networking. Do you have networking pages? All right. Networking pages being like where employees can kind of talk with each other and talk about the things, the best practices. You can utilize those as ways of making sure that there's a network being developed among your employees. Also, best practices in terms of onboarding is coaching and mentoring. And typically it could be either formal or informal. As long as you have something, I heard Karen say something about a mentor. As long as you have something where the individual has an understanding of these are the persons that I can talk to about both the job and some of the psychosocial things that are going on at the job. And then, of course, the performance feedback tools, the 360 degree, the performance appraisals. And let me say this about the performance appraisals. This is one of those things I get on my soapbox about. The performance appraisal is not something that you just write out and you just check off the box. Performance appraisal, the person who does it should be trained how to do it, right? Otherwise, the information that's collected becomes subjective, and that becomes another reason why people leave, right? The performance appraisal should have some idea, or the person who's doing it should have some idea of what it takes for the person to advance to the next level. And those are the things that they're tracking, as opposed to, how they're communicating per se with folks and those kinds of things that might be personal to the individual. All right. So there needs to be some kind of a official, somebody who's doing the performance appraisal who actually knows what to do. That's very important. So in terms of orientation, these are the kinds of things that take place when you actually hire the new person. Right? So I see this as a little bit different than the onboarding process. For me, the onboarding process takes place before you even hire somebody. Right? These are common things that people normally go through in an orientation, having an understanding of the legal and compliance issues, having an understanding of the organizational products. How many of y'all do orientations? Okay, good. The new hire orientation survey, there should be some way of tracking how your way of understanding how the new employee understands what they have been presented with and what their feedback is with regard to the orientation itself. Right, those things need to be integrated and come back into play. And then, of course, you have the specific trainings that a lot of people just use to check off the boxes. But this is also a key area where you demonstrate that these are important values to you. Right, so you have to not just checking off a box, but something that you say, this is a part of our culture. Let us demonstrate how it's a part of our culture. All right. Any other questions so far? Okay. So these are the best practices related to retention. We're talking about intrinsic rewards being those rewards that make an individual feel like they're self-actualized. That makes them feel like, it's not just about the compensation, but it's about, for me as an employee, something that helps me feel good about what I'm doing. So, for example, the recognition of the work that a person does, allowing a person to have a special project in the subject or area where they specialize in, right? Allowing a person to have opportunities to work in teams, right? These are intrinsic rewards that are beyond compensation, but where you have actively found out and you are actively allowing the individual to exercise those areas of their skill and talent where they feel like they're contributing.
I love what you just said about projects. We all think about delegation, right? When I think about delegation, a lot of the time, I think about a project that somebody can take out will help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just stuff I don't want to do, but it's something that will help somebody else.
Yeah, and people perceive when you're pushing something off on them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they perceive that. And when you can identify those things, those talents and skills that the person brings to the table, and you talk about them in the process of assigning a project, then they're more encouraged to do it. They feel like it's worth it for me to extend this extra effort. Right. Another retention technique is, of course, the training and career development. And this has to do with how do you provide education, how do you present career opportunities to individuals so that they can see that there is a progression. You know, so they can see that when I come in as an entry-level person, that there's a pathway for me to get to the top, or at least to obtain those skills that will help me to get to the top someplace else. Right? So a lot of times we go through and we say, well, we're just going to offer training for that particular job. But what we also want to think about are those elements of development where an individual gets the opportunity to do a job here, do a job there, and they are also becoming more experienced, such to the fact that they are able to say, well, you know what, I see that there is, you know, a logjam at the top, and you know, it might be time for me to move on. And that's really okay if you structured this correctly. Right? If there's a strategy that says that at this particular time, we need to have succession plans with regard to these types of positions, then that's really okay. Right? Because people are going to leave for better, most people leave for better opportunities anyway. So one of the things you mentioned, Danielle, was the compensation policy. So, so when we're talking about the salaries, when we're talking about the benefits, one of the things that you can do, particularly in a well-established industry, is you can talk about what are the salary ranges. I'm not sure, but are there salary surveys within fundraising? All right. So I hate to talk about RIT's business, but there is a policy that says that you should be at least 90% of the median, right? So if that's your policy, then and you explain it to people, then people understand, well, that's kind of where we are. Right, but if they come in and they find out that there's no merit raises, there's no bonus, there's no compensation structure that helps them to grow, there's no official compensation package or benefit package, it's like, I think I'm just going to chase the dollar someplace else.
I was gonna say, how do you have that kind of conversation where you know an employee isn't being paid what they deserve and you're not sure and your hands are tied? Yeah,
I think the first thing is that you know, there's an understanding of what the salary structures are, right? The understanding of the wage structures. You know, for example, if you have the salary survey and your HR department knows, you know, what the wage bands are, then that's what you talk about. You know, these are the wage bands, but these are some of the other things that we can offer. Some of those intrinsic rewards, you know, these are some of the development, you know, where you're able to go to different classes and able to acquire different skills. You're able to be put on different projects and to be transferred to different departments. Those are the things that you can kind of talk about in lieu of higher salaries, right? Some people just want to get paid more money, you know, and that's fine. But we also have other opportunities that they can take advantage of. Right.
There's a lot of movement in some state laws that require now salary range to post in the job description, in the job announcement. What's your take?
Personally, I think it's a good idea.
Me too.
Now, employers might not like it, but I think it's a good idea because, you know, so I'm most of the time I'm on the employee side, right? So it allows the employee to see that this is the salary range, that there's no funny business with regard to the salary negotiation. This is what it is. But employers don't like it because it reduces their flexibility. And if everybody is showing what they're paying people, then there's a good chance that you're not going to get person that you want, unless there are other elements of the job that they're attracted to. What other questions?
Well, so in that scenario, you know, if you were trying to apply, I know this is something pretty common in higher ed. We post for both an assistant and an associate director at the same time. You know, I think there's always a reluctance to post the salary band there because it would be very wide. And you don't want the assistant directors to want the top end for associate and vice versa. How do you sort of negotiate that? Or do you think that the answer is just separate those out and be clear about what you really want?
No, this kind of goes back to the job itself. What are the items, the elements of the job that would suggest that this position is higher than the other? And if you're able to demonstrate that, you know, these are the kinds of requirements and duties that separate the director from the assistant director, I mean, it's right there on paper. And you can say, well, this is the salary band for assistant director, and this is the salary band for the director based on these requirements. Now, if the requirements are blurred or, you know, there's no clear distinction about why this is a higher level, then you have a problem.
So what if you have a new position and you don't know what the band or range is yet?
You don't know what it is.
Right. You want to hire it, you know what you want. How do you figure that out?
Here's what I tell my students. There is a website, the occupational, if you send me something, I'll give you the exact name. But what it does is it allows you to compare the positions. And then it should give you some salary range for the positions based on the job duties. It's a government website.
I personally use Glassdoor, but it's self.
Glassdoor is another way.
Yeah, so it could be like old information too. You know, it could be something that's like outdated from 2015. I think I don't know how long they leave that up there.
Yeah, the Glassdoor is another way that you can kind of compare salaries.
SCA Directory of Occupations.
SCA, that's it.
Thanks to Mr. Google, yes.
Mr. Google.
Or Ms. Google.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, make sure I leave time for Craig. All right, there's just one other thing that I want to make sure that you are aware of. I don't know if people are aging out in your industry. Is that a big deal? Well, here's what they're doing in the nursing field. They're redesigning the job. You know, they don't want the knowledge to walk out of the door. And at a particular age, particularly in nursing, they can't do the physical stuff that they used to do, right? But they do have knowledge that they can share. So what they try to do is redesign the job in such a way that the nurses get to kind of choose what hours they want to work. So it's a little bit more flexible in terms of the hours. Choose to what degree or at what point that they want to retire. They build in wellness programs so that the nurses can kind of maintain, maintain their physical and mental and emotional status. And then, of course, there's the technology changes where they might get assistance to help lift people, or they might get assistance in terms of calculating, some of the medicine requirements and some of those kinds of things. So I don't know if that's something that kind of can translate to the fundraising and advancement field, but these are, particularly job design might be a good approach, but these particular things you might want to think about. And then, of course, for HR best practices in retention for retirement, at a certain age, people want to, they want to learn something else. And if you can kind of offer those kinds of things, and they might feel like this is worth it for me to stay if I know that I'm going to get a level of training and development in some other area. And then give them the opportunity to formally mentor someone else. All right, so in that way, they're still engaged, they still stick around, within your workplace. And you still get to leverage some of that knowledge that they have. Right? So I'm going to turn it over to Craig, but before I go, I'm going to have you can have these slides. But one of the things that is also very important is one thing I want to leave with you is that when you have a retention and recruitment plan, it should be in alignment with your overall HR strategy. And so what I've tried to do is kind of give you a little model to help you remember what kinds of things you need to keep in place. And also this important idea of evaluation, right? People skip over that, right? So these are kind of the evaluation metrics. This helps give you some kind of indication about how you're doing, how your HR process is doing. And you'll be able to get all these slides. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody. I said I'm Craig Evans, and I just have to, I appreciate the comments about recruiting and onboarding, because I always tell folks looking for jobs that the time they will be best treated by their prospective employers when they're being recruited and onboarded, right? And if so, that has to go well. And when I was recruited to Hopkins and then hired, I was remote still for a few months. And the third day, it took me a week to get my email. It took me 3 weeks to get a computer. It took me a month to get access to the database. And on the third day of employment in June of 21, and I've said this to Hopkins, so it's not a secret, right? I got an email from Central HR, not Development HR, that said, if you don't finish your I-9 process, you're going to be terminated. And I'm like, well, if somebody would tell me what the I-9 process is when I live in Rochester, New York, I'll be glad to complete it. And so, and my thinking there was a lesser experienced person would be really turned off. And I thought, if they're treating an associate dean like that, what are they doing for everybody else? And so I complained in a polite, respectful way, and of course, they put me on a committee. Thank you. But now we have this really great onboarding process, and I was able to bring in 2 people on my team, and I said, this will be the best onboarding process because I don't want them to go through what these were newer people. So I just can't say enough about the way we recruit and onboard people should be the best they're treated throughout, right? And then when they get in there, you find out stuff. But it was a nightmare. Just want to share that with you. So what I want to talk to you about is a little bit about how leaders can build great cultures, and great cultures serve retention, right? So what are the qualities of the best boss you've ever had? No names, please.
Transparent.
Transparent?
Really helpful.
Helpful, supportive,
It's back to you.
it's back to you, responsive. What else?
Willing to take a risk, give you assignments, and it's not clear whether you're going to be successful or not because it's something new.
So trust.
Yeah.
Trust and giving you things to do, right? What else?
There's weight behind their words,
Say more.
like, it's not just talking, it's action, so that their actions match what they're saying.
They want to talk.
Yeah.
What else?
I think it goes with that one and with transparency, but just overall honesty. You know, it's good to know where things stand and what good, bad, or indifferent. It's nice to have somebody's honest opinion.
So being honest, and when it's hard, courageous conversations. Right? That's hard. Anything else that comes to mind?
Online, we have willingness to step in and has your back.
Willingness to step in and has your back. Love that. So switch gears. Tell me about the qualities of the worst boss you've ever had. No names, please.
They would say one thing and do another.
It's really hard to build trust and really easy to break trust, right? What else? Worst boss ever?
Dismissive.
Dismissive,
Coercive.
coercive,
A manipulator.
manipulator, pitting team members against each other. Because I had a boss that was sexually harassing people, but that's a different discussion.
No names.
That was bad. Other bad qualities,
On mine, we have micromanaging.
micromanaging. What is micromanaging really? That action signifies what on the part of the boss?
Lack of trust.
Exactly. And what I say about micromanagement is this, is that sometimes employee needs to have more management than others. So the leadership has to be directed to where the employee is. And I have some younger folks on my team, because I'm the oldest person in the room, but sometimes I feel the need to have more information. And I don't want them to feel bad about that. So I say to my team, and it works really well, I'll say, can I micromanage just for a moment, please? And they laugh because they know that's my signal to them. I just need to be a little more involved with this, so I understand what's going on. But it comes from a place of trust, not a place of fear, right? And so that's how I get into when I need to sort of manage somebody a little bit differently. I'll say that, and they're like, okay, sure, what do you need? Other bad qualities.
I think along the lines of dismissive, not wanting to implement new ideas or strategies that weren't their own.
Yes, yeah. Not wanting to let other people have good ideas and go for it, and taking credit for other people's success. I always say, our success is our team's success, our failures are on me. How I think about it. So all those things you guys talked about in terms of good bosses, bad bosses, what any theme that you're seeing or not seeing?
A lack of confidence, being like scared.
Leading from fear. What I've done this probably a dozen times with different groups, and it always comes out the same, is that the issue is not about their technical competence. Because nobody said that a bad boss couldn't do this job they were hired to do, but it was about leadership, right? So everything is about the soft skills, which are hard. And so the soft skills are hard. And leaders that ignore the soft skills, and you know what by soft skills, ignore them at their peril. Because when people don't feel trusted, when they feel micromanaged, when they feel not included, not informed, that is a retention issue. It's also a productivity issue. And I've been in places where you all have too, where there's no trust, there's no safety. The only focus is on going to task. And if you go to task without trust, safety, and synergy, you end up getting maybe some stuff done, but feeling like crap about it, right? And that's not good. So my soapbox is leadership based on trust. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of tools today that I welcome you to take back if you're a leader, or take back if to your team, and you might think about implementing some of these ideas. And I have some background and stories to tell about these. So the first is having ground rules as a team. And you can see the question up there. This is literally an exercise we do at a meeting. And I did it when I first came to Hopkins. I did it at Rochester Regional, did it at Wells College. And then every time somebody leaves or joins the team, you do it again, because it's a brand new team whenever somebody leaves or comes back in. And so this is the question I asked my team. What rules and guidelines are needed for our team so we feel safe and supported as we work toward our goals? And I literally put up the chart paper or the whiteboard, we write them down, and I give a few prompts of ones that are important to me. These are a few, the first couple of them. And team members add to these all the time. During this meeting we had, I just did it in August because I hired a new employee, and I said, when we have a new employee, it's a new team. And we revisited all the ground rules again. Number 3 is interesting because we had to really talk about that because I have folks with, older parents and young kids and all of that. So in meetings, we decided that not turning phones off is okay, but keeping them on silent and notifying the group if they're expecting a call is being respectful with technology at a meeting table. So number 7, I have a story. A couple weeks ago, I had a scheduled staff meeting with my team at 9 a.m. in person, because we've all agreed to meet in person for our staff meetings. And 9:05, 9:10, 4 of my 7 people weren't there yet. And I'm a little torqued because I wanted to get going. I got stuff to do. And so, but I wanted to have the whole team. So I waited until 9:20 and they kind of came in, and this was a little unusual and various things had happened that day. But so we conducted the meeting. I didn't address it with the whole group because I don't like to punish the whole group for the behavior of a few. That's my classroom teacher experience. So later in the day, one of my direct reports comes in and she says, I want to tell you about the meeting after the meeting. Do you know about the meeting after the meeting? There's always a meeting after the meeting. And our job as leaders is to try to influence that discourse if we're not at the meeting after the meeting, right? So she said, I want to tell you about the meeting after the meeting. I'm like, do tell. So she says, I talked to them, we talked, and we agreed that we broke a ground rule. We let you down, and that's not okay. And I was like, really? You had to meet? And so this was what is supposed to happen with these, the team policing itself. And Debbie says, I like these ground rules, but I never realized how powerful they were until this happened today. And so the rest of the afternoon, I was in the office, and one by one, each of those people that were late came in and apologized and said it won't happen again. Love that. So, and that made these very powerful for each other. And then, number 11 is mine. If it's not fun, we're not doing it. So, what do you think about the ground rules? Any comments, ideas? Do you see it working for you?
I love the idea of revisiting it when a new member joins the team, because so often someone does come 5 minutes late to a meeting for a legitimate reason and as an exception, and it's like they haven't entered the room. Things just keep going, and you hate for that to be. I would hate for that to be the culture of folks I worked with.
Exactly. And in the previous position I held, I had an employee who attitude just started going really downhill, and it was getting bad, and there was some personal stuff going on, and I was trying to support that, but there was something that happened. I remember the exact situation. It was sort of a not required, but like a lunch meeting that we were all trying to be together at for a celebration, and the person didn't show and didn't know where this person was. So that wrecked my last nerve, as we said in the South. And so the next day I pulled him in and I said, I want to know what's going on here. He said, well, what? And I said, well, you violated like 4 ground rules in the past month about being on time or attitude or being, it was a bunch of things. And he says, which ones? And I have them posted in my office. And I said, this one, this one, this one, and this one. He's like, you're right, I did. So it was a series of issues, and I was on the path of termination. And I said to this person, I said, it might be time for you to find a different job because it clearly isn't working for you. And he was very upset. Came back later and called me later and said, could we have dinner tonight? And I said, we could. And he came back with a written plan of how he's going to address the issues of trust that I had, plus the programmatic stuff that had fallen off the wagon. And he said, I have a second chance. And I said, I really have to think about this because I did have it. Because I said, I didn't want to sacrifice the team for the behavior of this one person. And the next day I granted him a second chance. Did wonderfully. And now he's in a new position and just really thriving. And I saw him a few weeks ago when he was in Baltimore, and he said, you did save my life. And I said, I know, it's okay. But that's the power of the ground rules, is that you can hold people accountable for their actions, behavior, and performance with those. The other thing that I do is in this exercise is say to the team, I want you to talk about what you expect from each other on this team. What is it that you expect from each other? And I let them talk, and we write stuff down. And these These are nothing to do with me. These are all things that come from my team. I love that we expect grace when we need it. And then I asked them what they expect from me. And I leave the room. And most folks say, I've never been asked that by my boss. And these are the things that they said to me, that what they expect from me.
Great question.
Yeah.
When you've left the room and the individuals are talking, is there typically one person who's leading, or is there kind of a, I mean, do you know?
I don't know, I'm not in the room. I think what I do is say, I want one person to take notes, right? But I believe that they're just talking about what they expect from me. They had a lot of expectations from me. And I recognize that some of this is from perhaps past leadership. So they were like ensuring that they got what they need. And, you know, since I've asked the question, I have to listen to the answer, right? And when I come back into the room, I ask them to talk me through it, and I get to ask clarifying questions, and I get to ask for some wording changes to make it more clear to me. And like number 3 here, they said this in August, they said, but you found us more space, you found us more staff, you found us more budget. So they said, we're not unappreciative of the things that you've done so far to advocate, but keep doing it. And then while they're doing this, I have a list of things that I expect from them. The number 4 one is very interesting because it was a culture of deadlines being ignored. And what I realized early on was that I needed to be very clear about a deadline that I made, because most often it affected work that I needed to get done to give to somebody else. And so I had a situation where recently where an employee deadline came and went. And I don't micromanage, so I don't ask every week, where are you with this, right? I just say, if you need to talk to me about this, use your one-on-one for that, or whatever. And I said, where are we? And he said, oh, I really didn't get to that. And I said, so what about this don't you understand? And now, when something happens, I build deadlines, I build myself some cushion for deadlines, for obvious reasons, but stuff happens. And now, I'm getting, once in a great while, somebody will say, Craig, I just need another day for this. I'm like, fine, thank you for letting me know. And that builds that culture. Yeah.
You're really talking about accountability, and you sort of suggest that it's a separation strategy. Can you talk about it, or do you have thoughts about how it's a retention strategy?
I believe that trust and accountability are the things that either drive retention or drive people away. Because if people on the team, if people see the leader tolerating the worst behavior on the team, that's where the team is, right? So if I have people that continually show up late, or don't do the work, or miss deadlines, and I don't do anything about it, and they don't see some sort of action, not from me, but some sort of change, that lowers morale, trust, and everything else, right? So I had a situation where we have a hybrid schedule, but office hours are 8:30 to 5. Especially for the support people. And this person was coming in 9, 9:30, 10. So one day it happened again. I pulled him in my office and I said, I didn't say, why are you late? I said, are you okay? Yeah, why? And I said, well, we have a sign-in sheet if you're going to be in or out of the office, so we all know where you are. It's on our Teams thing. And I said, your Teams thing said you were in the office, but I didn't see you, so I was worried something happened. So instead of saying you were late, I went to the human I care about, which I do. Right? And he says, oh, and I said, so it's professional courtesy if your schedule changes and you don't to tell somebody that's happening, right? And so he came back later and says, thank you for holding me accountable. Love, and she says, thank you for the way you did it. And it hasn't happened again. But I think accountability is really the trust, and people watch what the leader does and doesn't do.
And people typically leave because of their team, not necessarily because of the boss or the hired people.
And that's my last one, grow professionally. So again, this is an exercise that few leaders do. They don't ask their teams what they expect from them. And that takes some courage the first time you do it, because you never know what you're gonna hear. You got to honor what you hear, right? And that's my presentation. Any questions or comments? Helpful?
Yeah.
You will get these slides. I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. If I can talk with you at some point, you want to reach out and get more information about what I do and what I'm sure Torrance will be the same way. Love to connect with you and hear more about your leadership journey and what happens with you. So I appreciate the invitation, and it's so good to be back in Rochester with some familiar faces too. Thank you so much.
Well, I just want to thank everyone that was joined us today, whether in person or virtually. We have another education. It's called our deep dive. So it's not as a format similar to this, but it's a little bit of a more casual. It's gonna be held on November 1st, about 5:30. And that topic is bringing in another RIT professional, and it's more about public speaking and how to have your your speech and your thoughts carried through. A lot of that is what we do in our world. So I think it's always great to be able to help refine those skills for us. So again, that's going to be on November 1st, and more information will be coming forward. So again, thank you all. Torrance, Craig, thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate you coming from Baltimore and for joining us today. So.
I want to give you folks a shout out.